Thanks, Dorcus, and thank you everyone for joining this COP today. I'll be the host for this webinar in the COP series. And I know some of you, but I'll introduce myself. I'm Parthiban Tattapalli Prakash. I'm one of the quantitative genetics specialists in the Accelerated Breeding Initiative. And as I mentioned, I'll be the host for the next 1 hour. So again, good day to everyone from different time zones, and thank you for making time to join us today. Our speaker is Dorcus Gemenet, whom most of you know already. She is a trained quantitative geneticist and currently serving as the breeding scheme optimization lead under Accelerated Breeding in Breeding for Tomorrow. And today, Dorcus will be taking us through the key aspects of how trait discovery and deployment could be streamlined with breeding programs for effective product development. So yeah, we can save the questions. Please find, if you have any questions in between, type in, and we can address those questions once Dorcus is done the presentation. And with that, I'm handing over the floor to Dorcus. The floor is yours. I think you're on mute, Dorcus. Just wanted to...
Thank you, Parthiban, for the introduction. For those colleagues who are in the CGIAR and who are in the Accelerate work package, I think we have gone through our first round of a deep dive into the trait discovery and deployment strategy, which is in alignment with goal number 4 of the Accelerated Breeding High-Level Goals of 2025. Today, we want to look more into how we can streamline trait deployment into elite breeding populations to create more impact. Okay. All right, so this is still focused on accelerated breeding high-level goal number 4. And the purpose of this goal is to accelerate the integration of trait discovery and deployment efforts into our final products by focusing on high-impact targets, aligning the trait discovery and deployment activities with product development priorities, and optimizing the trait deployment process. The expected outcome from this high-level goal is that trait discovery and deployment initiatives across the programs deliver greater value across crops and centers by enhancing genetic gains, improving resource efficiency, and ensuring stronger market relevance of the products that we do release. So where are we at? In 2022, our Discover team did a survey with the breeding program. We do understand that in relation to trait discovery and deployment, several programs are at different stages. There are those programs that have well-structured TD&D teams. There are those programs that are still figuring out how to structure this. But across the board, several lessons were learned from this survey. The first one was that over 160 traits are being researched across the board. And therefore, it follows that resources and efforts were scattered among too many traits. And most of these efforts were not well aligned with the breeding strategy. And therefore, this led to insufficient impact on breeding pipelines. And for example, it has been noted that most of the QTL or haplotypes have been lost before late-stage testing. And so they haven't ended up in the end product to be able to create impact in the farmers' fields. So this led to, of course, the need to refocus trade discovery and deployment effort across the programs. And just to go over why this is important to make this refocusing, first is that, of course, several teams across the programs we have been interacting with for quite a while now, initially used to run very open breeding pipelines, and mostly because they are scared of running out of genetic diversity or genetic variance. And in this case, they would bring in anything that looked promising without really characterizing or understanding where this is coming from. This is one point that we have talked about time and again, that more diversity is not always better because of linkage drag that can limit our progress. We have on many occasions said there is a trade-off between genetic gain and genetic diversity that needs to be balanced according to needs. And therefore, there is need for programs to have clear deployment strategies from trade discovery pipelines into the elite breeding populations. The other reason why is because more focus would drive breakthroughs, spreading the resources too thinly across many TD&D projects, as we have seen, reduces the chance of creating meaningful impact for the from our TD&D efforts. So we need to concentrate efforts into a smaller set of high value traits and or QTL or haplotypes. The other point why we need to refocus is that pipelines limits matter, because elite breeding pipelines have limited absorption capacity for novel genetics, novel QTL or haplotypes, or new traits. And so if you do more than what a breeding pipeline can absorb, then this makes it pointless and leads to inefficiencies in resource allocation. So we need to be smarter in allocating the few resources we do have, especially with the TD&D space. So today, the main focus is for us to show and share our thoughts on how our TD&D efforts can be more successful at creating impact. In this case, because research, even though it creates hope, harvests are the ones that feed the world, and this is our bottom line that we need to focus on across the product development pipeline. So I'm going to share a few thoughts about how the breeding programs can create more impact from the TD&D initiatives that are being carried out across the board. Of course, noting that different programs are carrying this out at different levels, and acknowledging program diversity in resourcing and also in structuring. The first of those thoughts is that breeding programs need to clarify roles and responsibilities. And the goal here is to eliminate duplication between trade teams and product development teams, to foster collaboration and to ensure ownership and accountability across the product development process. So with this, we think that trade and product development teams must complement each other and not compete, so that these pipelines are complementary and not parallel. That the trait work is owned by the breeding program, so both the trait and product development teams have joint ownership of this work, and this must be designed with the end product in mind. That the collaboration between the trait and product development teams should run from concept to product delivery. The second thing that we think should be in place to enhance more impact from the TD&D initiatives across the board is to document and prioritize the TD&D targets. The goal here is to ensure that we are focusing on the traits that have the highest likelihood of impact and delivery. And the first step here is that it is important for the breeding teams to take stock of all the TD&D efforts within a breeding program. This serves as the first step to prioritization, and this should be a program's initiative. As I mentioned, we have previously done a survey across centers and crops in 2022, but this information should be important for the programs themselves to take stock of what is happening so that they can identify what is really important to be prioritized and what could be dropped. Then after understanding what is currently happening, then there is need for each market segment to build a clear ranked list of QTL and haplotypes that are available and that directly align with the target product profile. As previously mentioned, all TD&D needs to be in alignment with the intended products. So they should be product focused. To be able to do this ranking, there's need to understand, to have weights or weighted criteria to decide what matters most. For example, we might want to think through which QTL or haplotypes are more in demand and impactful if integrated into the elite breeding population, and which ones might at the moment not adequately represented in our elite breeding populations. But as human beings, it's easier to take on more things than to drop things. And so to be able to prioritize and to focus on really what matters, we need to ask ourselves some tough questions. For example, are we chasing too many targets at once? And if yes, what can we do about that? Which high value QTL or haplotypes can we fix quickly in the elite breeding populations? And for this, prioritize QTL or haplotypes. Have we validated these in elite backgrounds and target environments so that we don't end up with the priority targets being selected out before they even reach late stage testing towards product delivery? And many other questions that need to be asked. The next thought is to keep the TD&D efforts product focused. And the goal here is to ensure that traits move beyond discovery and actually shape the final products. So in this, the trait and product development teams need to have a strategy to integrate critical QTL haplotypes into the elite breeding populations. and to ensure that those priority TD&D traits are retained through lab testing and product delivery. Therefore, this means that the trait teams, in this case, should be involved together with the product development teams in product testing stages so that the traits can be tracked in real-world conditions. The next thought to help us create more impact is to strengthen collaboration and support. And the goal here is to accelerate product development through collaborative, scalable, and efficient breeding innovation. This calls for a partnership between trade and product development teams, quantitative genetics experts, accelerated breeding, and breeding research services. With this collaboration, this will enhance the development and use of shared genotyping panels, for example, for QA/QC, marker-assisted selection, genomic selection, and these need to be representative and updated regularly to stay relevant for the breeding populations they are targeting. The other one is to identify and close gaps in phenotyping assays for priority TPP traits, because you cannot improve what you cannot measure. So this applies to both traits that are in trait discovery pipelines as well as traits that are in product development pipelines, especially those that are in product development pipelines that do not have phenotyping assays at scale that enables them to be selected, most importantly at earlier stages, and be used in making pipeline decisions. That there is need to assess whether each program can develop assays, phenotyping assays at scale for all traits, or if it's better to pool resources across programs within a center. And if this is not also possible for some traits, how can the teams leverage shared facilities, if available, to make phenotyping more efficient and accessible? So those are the high-level thoughts on how the breeding teams could make more impact from TD&D. And I'm now going to list what are the key takeaways. First is that we need to focus on fewer and highly impactful traits, rather than focusing on many but not well characterized that may not have anticipated impacts in the product development pipeline. There is need to ensure seamless collaboration between traits and product development teams. There is need to keep TD&D aligned with target product profile goals from start to finish. And there is need to build and share capacity for phenotyping and genotyping to accelerate this process. So having shared these goals and having shared our goal number 4 previously, what are the next steps that we are planning to engage with the teams moving forward in the Discover space? The first one is to discuss with the trait and product teams across programs in order to define what are those best practices for TD&D, and to also identify barriers and how to mitigate those barriers in order to integrate efficiently TD&D efforts in our breeding programs. The second part that would come from this discussion is having those best practice guidelines published so that they can be referenced with breeding programs across the board. The third would be then also to jointly identify KPIs that can help to track the progress in the revised TD&D strategy. And lastly, that breeding programs implement refocus TD&D initiatives towards better impact. So today it was a short presentation, not like in the deep dive, but just to share some thoughts so we can generate some discussion and some views that we might not have included here, and to prepare everyone on the call on what would be the next steps on this topic. I'll stop here and hand over to Patipan.
Thank you, Dorcas. Thanks for the outline and the key points and takeaways as well. So I have not seen any question in the chat. So if anybody wants to have a question, please raise your hands or unmute yourself and go on.
Well, I'll perform my normal function and ask the first question, if that's okay.
Sure, gotta go ahead.
Thanks very much for that. This is a very important area to systematize. You know, the process at Erie is pretty well advanced in the sense of identifying both targets and moving them into in a strategic way into elite germplasm. And that to do that, a lot of work has been done to really understand the frequency and linkage relationships of the targets and generating markers. It seems like having those resources in all our major crops is a prerequisite to systematic trait deployment. Where do we stand on that? I mean, that's worth. It seems like that's worth an organized push, generating that level of understanding of the frequencies and tools for moving the targets in all of our species.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I think ERI is one of those programs that have advanced in this scope of Discover quite a lot. There is a lot that can be learned from there. And I do agree that understanding frequencies and linkage to traits would be something that we need to follow up with the other programs as well. So it's something that we can build into our next steps in engaging with the programs. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Any other question? Or I don't want to put Damien on the spot. I think Damien is on the call. So if you want to share some insights or into the trait deployment and discovery space, feel free to unmute and share your thoughts, Damien. I know it's late for you in the night.
Yeah, but for you guys always. Well, maybe I can just reply to Gary, since I was actually just doing that in the chat anyway. To get or to establish that baseline and to highlight the gaps and the areas where we can move forward most efficiently. there's a couple of things we need. Okay, first of all, we need to generate the raw data on genotyping data on the breeding material and all that sort of business. But we also need to have the informatics resources to analyze that data. So in particular, to analyze the frequency of key genes in the elite material, we need to have some sort of definition of, these are the genes, this combination of markers, or this combination of alleles on these markers is the favorable state, and this other combination is the unfavorable state, and so forth. And then we need to generate the QTL profiles on the elite material. So the good news is we've been busy working to implement that in the EBS system. So we have now implemented, or we implemented some time ago, the MarkerDB, which includes the facilities to both track all of the marker information, as well as create the definitions of, these are my genes and QTLs, and this combination is good, this combination is bad, that sort of thing. And then once that raw data is in MarkerDB, that can be then used through the QTL profiling functionality to analyze breeding materials, whether that's based on low density Intertech data or mid density panels or whatever it is. So those sort of resources are in EBS now, and that should make it a lot easier now to actually start generating these kinds of data sets.
Thank you, Damien. And Gary, your points in the direct message, private message are noted.
And I see Harish has responded to Damien's comment that he is willing to test and the MarkerDB and the QTL profile functionality in EBS. So that's something that's proactive and nice. Harish, do you want to comment something like some of the status and probably if there's any impediments that you might face? Hope I'm not putting you on the spot again, but since you're responding, that would be nice to hear.
I mean, I think, yeah. So thanks, Damien. I think, yeah, we heard from Kate, and we were actually in a discussion with her, I think in April or May, and we had expressed our interest to test, for some of the QTLs we have for random crops. Yeah, since I have the microphone, I just want to ask the question, and maybe this was already addressed by Dorcus in the presentation. I may have missed it. I mean, is there a plan to link all of the trait work to the breeding pipeline and by that to the market segment? Wouldn't that be an appropriate step to do to ensure, the traits we're working with are high priority and also, also attract sufficient investment required, because many of them will become part of breakthrough products, for people who are working with the Gates grant. And I think they may require some level of visibility as well, and kind of investments, either they need or attracting.
Yeah, thank you, Harish. That's a good point. Today, I think I just mentioned in passing in the previous discussion on goal number 4, that was actually our first goal, to make sure that all TD&D is aligned with the market segments and the target product profiles. The traits that went into or that were prioritized for TD&D, there was some criteria to do that. One of those would be they're important for the target product profile, but they are not adequately represented in the elite breeding population, so they would be candidate for that. And the other, of course, criteria is that maybe they would be measured more efficiently if we had marker-assisted selection capability more efficiently than phenotypically. That would also make them candidates for that. But as I did mention, all TD&D efforts need to be product focused. And that product is the product that the elite breeding population and pipeline is seeking to achieve. So without that linkage, then we have not done any prioritization of TD&D activities. So good point, Harish. Thank you.
Yeah.
Back to
Thank
you,
you.
Fatima.
Yeah, thank you, Harish. There's a comment from Sean. Yeah, it's a good comment, and it's not a question. So if you wanted to expand further or like reiterate, Sean, you can come online too, since there's no hands raised. So we have time for discussion too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot because like we're starting to orient a lot of our work toward more of like a service-oriented effort, given the sizes of the market segments in like West and East Africa. So, you know, trying to think more intentionally about how to actually pull off controlled integration. I think forward breeding has major limitations when we're talking about, 3 or 4 or more loci. And I think the testing strategy that we have implemented for like sharing botanical seed, we're not testing at scale, so it makes it even harder to like really get information that's quality information in the target environment, given the way that we've kind of split the work. If we're assuming like it's a 1 CG cassava program or whatever. But I think, yeah, inbreeding kind of solves that. If the goal is to recover some improved lines with specific traits. And yeah, I just wanted to make that comment to continue to push for, yeah, like the advantages of inbreeding or partial inbreeding aren't just genetic gain, but there's practical reasons that it makes sense to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, for that comment, especially in cassava, which is highly heterozygous and semi-inbreeding. I don't know, Sean, if you have managed to do full inbreeding so far.
I'm at S3 now with some stuff. We're starting to develop a strategy to try to do some rapid purging. It's resource intensive, right? Like if it's not funded, it gets funded off of residual money from other projects. So like with targeted funding, I think it's doable at scale.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean, for that comment. We will be following up that discussion also when we start interacting with the trade teams as part of our next steps and see what would be the advantages or not of this inbreeding. But of course, you do have experience because I know that you have piloted some of this already to some generations, if I'm not wrong. I see that Randy did have a comment to that. Randy has been very passionate about the inbreeding in cassava as well. Randy, do you want to make a comment?
No, I mean, I made my comment there. So, I'm an industry guy in this process. I always think about it. Everything goes too slow here. And the trait conversions don't do anything unless they happen really fast because you're not market relevant. So I guess I'm just underlining that, as you know very well, Dorcas.
Yeah. Thank you. Well noted. So part of streamlining the processes would be to enable efficiency in first prioritizing the traits looking for sources of those traits. And today we were more or less focusing on deploying those traits. So I understand your frustration, but I think this is the first step towards maybe making things move a bit faster. But of course, you can see that there are programs that are well ahead of the curve. This also has to relates with the complexity of the crop, but I think if we are able to streamline most of these things for each crop, we would be able to make faster progress than we are making at the moment. So thank you, Randy, for that.
Yeah, oh, you did a great job in outlining the issues. It just, yeah, you know, I'm not getting more patient as I get older.
Yes, agreed. Back to you,
Yeah. I think
Pativan.
the second point of Randy, I mean, in terms of this turnover time of market data, maybe I can partially comment, and Damien could add more. I think that is getting faster with outsourcing. Is it right, Damien? I think we do get market data within the generation to make sure we make the selections moving forward, if I get the question right.
Sorry, I'm a bit under the weather this evening.
I can see.
Yes, depending on where you are getting the genotyping done, it's not usually a major issue to get the data within within one generation. So in other words, in time to make selection decisions for crossing. Obviously at IRRI, we are doing most of our foreground genotyping in-house, but background genotyping is outsourced and all these sorts of things. And I think that with the way the genotyping technologies are going, we're going to see that becoming more and more or closer and closer to the point of sampling. So data generation is going to become faster and faster and closer to the point where you actually take the sample from the plant. So certainly that's something that needs to be looked at, and you need to make sure that your workflow is generating data in a timely manner, but I don't usually see that as being the major limitation.
Yep. Thanks, Damien.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some interesting comments in the chat coming up, and Gary has a comment asking Sean that an alternative to inbreeding would be decoupled GS based on GBVs and high weights for the target traits. Do you or any of the quantitative geneticists know of any testing or simulations of that approach, and citing that IRRI has fully integrated rapid generation advance into trait deployment? Yeah, it's an open question. So Sean, do you want to take it, or any attempt for that?
I just put my response. I just wrote my response
Okay.
so that we have like for posterity.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm like I think right now I'm really interested in exploring this within family recurrent genomic selection strategy, because I think you can extract products out of that faster than just kind of like a rapid cycling approach, because now you can manage sort of fewer haplotypes, and your predictions are actually meaningful without retraining. And I don't know, I think that there's been some decent gain with this kind of like wholesale pipeline recurrent GS approach, but I don't think that's really led to like true product extraction. There's been some like population improvement with that rapid cycling approach, but I would rather take my resources for genotyping and invest in something that can get me like a product as fast as possible, especially given the pressure that we're under to demonstrate some kind of like adoption of products that we're developing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, and to Gary also. If there have been number of simulations that have gone into this topic. In cassava, I think the cassava team here is aware. There are a few points that still need to be checked out, especially with the programs piloting some of these thoughts out. And part of that is what Sean is talking about on semi-selfing or semi-inbreeding. We had also recommended to the other program to try out the hybrid breeding without this inbreeding, which is basically what you're recommending, Gary, but we can't comment that more than that at the moment, because all we have now is some simulation recommendations and with not enough real data to actually compare some of this. But yeah, those thoughts have been discussed before, and they'll continue to be discussed now that cassava is making hybrid breeding one of their ambitions moving forward.
Yeah, I
Fatima?
don't see any newer comments or questions.
Yeah.
And I don't see any hands at the moment. Any last takers? Maybe you were crystal clear, Dorcas, so people are arguing with you.
Yeah, people are agreeing with me, especially on the discover topics. Even in the deep dives, there were not a lot of questions. But I hope that as we, because this is the first time where we are doing targeted discussion across the board on discover. So as we go along, maybe we all get aligned on where we are trying to get to, and we can have more questions. For now, those participants who are Discover contacts here, we will be sending out an invite, more of a small COP for Discover, so we can move along with the next steps together. And I know that Damien has presented in the COP previously on the ERI trade discovery and deployment. I know DCP have also presented, but yeah, I'll be looking forward to invite those teams again to make a presentation to a wider community so that we can cross-learn on those opportunities and barriers to efficiently deploy the TD&D in our specific crops. For those crops for those crops like cassava that are trying to do this, we'll continue the engagement and continue to support as much as possible the operationalizing and piloting some of the thoughts that are here and some of the thoughts that we have discussed previously. With this, I don't think many people have more comments now, but I see a new comment, Fatima.
Yeah, I think it's Sean commenting about the cassava GS project. Maybe I can just read it out. It's certainly critical, especially in the cassava, to prioritize fast product extraction. I'm just not sure that inbreeding is going to be faster. I think the fatal flaw of corner-led cassava GS project was inadequate TPP and selection index. It's more like a comment.
Don't blame that on Sean. That was me.
Oh, sorry. The name swap. Okay. It's Gary.
Let's get it, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, but for sure, there's an important topic, Dorcas, as you mentioned. It's critical that the programs do have a streamlined integration to be more effective rather than two parallel streams going together. And I hope we'll probably have some follow-up questions. Reach out to us, and we'll be working with the teams also So yeah, if there's no more questions, then I think it's time. We'll leave people early, few minutes, so I'll be happy. And look forward to the next COP. And thanks for the time and joining in all the discussion points.
Yeah, thank you all. And see you in our next COP.